Hey guys, good morning. Welcome in. Glad you guys are here. As you guys are coming in, go ahead and say hi in the chat. And glad you guys are joining me. If I can get my, there we go. All right. So, hello. Today is Friday, May 8th. I don't know if you guys are like me. It is unbelievable how fast this month is flown by. I've shared this in some of my Facebook lives that it's pretty remarkable. And I see now the value of experiences because they slow down time. And that's a reference to another book. If you guys haven't noticed, I like a few books. I read a lot of books. Unbelievably, if you asked any of my teachers, probably between the grades of 3rd and high school, bless their heart, they would have said, oh my goodness, this guy, is he ever going to read? Because I refused to read. I absolutely refused. I can think of like 3 or 4 that I read my entire life up until probably in my early 20s. I can remember reading The Outsiders. I don't know if you guys ever read The Outsiders. I can remember reading a few Mark Twain books, I think. And other than that, it's like a blur. I don't remember reading any books, any at all. And you know what? Hey, thanks for, bear with me, guys. I just got a notification that my signal is not real strong. So I'm going to switch to another source here. Bear with me as we're jumping in. We'll get into it here. And so thanks for being here. So if you didn't miss it, I'd love for you to say hi. Love for you guys in the chat to comment. And yeah, I'm excited to get started. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the book. Hopefully you guys have gotten value out of the book. It has been something that has made you either think or made you scratch your head, or if nothing else, I hope that you guys have gotten excited out of it because it's something to learn. So I want to say hello again to all of you guys that are joining in and reading some of your comments. Hello. People from all over, love it. And if you don't have the book, that's okay. You're going to get value out of today. I'm going to help kind of break down the first couple chapters, and we'll go through that stuff. And remember, homework from last week, and I'm going to pull it up just so I don't forget. I shared with you guys 3 tasks. I asked you to retake the assessment from a different point of view. I did that. I took it actually from 2 other points of view. I got an A on one and a B on the other. So I have a B, A, B, BAB. Read the first 2 chapters and identify 3 areas in each to act. Act is apply, change, or teach. And then number 3 is invite someone to the group to kind of hold you accountable to be a part of this journey. So here we are. You didn't retake the assessments. That's okay. You know what? I'm not here to be your, scolder, teacher, whatever. I'm just here to learn through the process. So this was me. I have the physical book. I actually bought the physical book. I got the Audible version. I listened to the Audible version first a couple weeks ago. Loved it. Took some great notes and had my daughter help me take some notes. And then I told Kelly about it. Here we are then, have the physical book, Audible, and I have now listened to the Audible an additional 3 times, okay? So I've listened to the first 2 chapters at this point 4 times, all right? So I've gone through it a lot, and here's what's amazing, is each time something a little different kind of really popped up to me. I liked the physical book because as I was making my notes, my entire page of notes this morning, I could easily reflect to that. And, I've done that at times where I have the Audible, I listen to Audible, I have the physical book, but I see tremendous value in teaching this. So I'm sharing this with you guys because if nothing else, if you really want to ingrain this, you want to bring people into your vision, I'm going to suggest you teach it as well, because I've already gotten tremendous value out of the first 2 chapters, listening to them that many times. Okay. So part 1 of the book, Vision Driven Leader, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to just highlight some areas. I'm going to highlight some areas that really stuck out to me. And I would love for you guys, as we're going along in the chat, if this is an area that, man, it's like, oh, I need to apply, I need to change, or I need to teach, just throw that in the chat. I would love for you guys to throw that in the chat, just so other people know. And I'd love to learn with you guys as we're doing this together, and to see what value you guys have gotten out of this. So the first thing I'm going to start, just kind of give a recap here. So part 1 is vision drives everything. And question 1 is, are you a leader or a manager? In the book, Michael Hyatt, and I'm reading my notes here. Trust me, I'm paying attention to you guys. I'm not looking away from you. I'm looking down at my notes. And, it really gets into this dichotomy of leader versus manager. And I loved personally the example of John F. Kennedy compared to George Bush. Because I think historically, yeah, I'm 40. I'll be 41 this summer. But I know those 2 figures, studied them. And I know my Canadian friends, just bear with me. I'm not going to try to make a comparison between Pierre Trudeau and Justin Trudeau. I don't know enough about Canadian politics to go there, but I'm glad you know about them, Joanne. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So, Kennedy was this often, as I understand, I'm going to give my paraphrase to it. Like here, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of, and he was a leader, but his personal life was probably a lot more similar to Donald Trump than anyone wants to realize. Okay. Here's a guy that whatever, and that's not to discredit him, because he's actually considered one of our best leaders. Why do I think? Is because he had amazing vision. He had this vision to say, we're going to get to the moon. It's like, come hell or high water, we're going to make it happen. And that kind of, I would say that zeal to do something crazy at that point, to say we're not going to be left behind, is I think what was so magical for him as a visionary leader. And then you get into, George Bush, and I love it, because now I think about it, I was like, everyone loved George, but George didn't do anything. And, it's just kind of like, oh, he was Ronald Reagan's, VP, and then he becomes president. And it's just like, oh, he was just that guy. And to understand that he didn't want to deal with vision, he just wanted to be that nice guy. And I live in a state where I'm seeing someone right now who probably is a lot like Bush, where he has no vision and no guts to stand up for what something believes in. He just kind of wants to roll with it. And I think it's just interesting to see that. And so I'm going to go through, and again, as you guys are, watching along, listening along, if something you're like, man, that's what I needed to apply, that's what I needed to change, that's what I needed to teach, throw it in the chat, just because I'd love to hear that, to be able to kind of interject a little bit deeper here. And so the first thing about leaders compared to managers, I'm going to read through this list, and Michael did a nice job of having it, and it's on page 22, the chart about what's a leader compared to a manager. And a leader creates and casts a vision. A leader saying, hey, this is what I see going on, and this is where we're going. I right now believe that we're in the greatest age of innovation that a lot of us have ever seen in our life, because this is the greatest time of challenge that a lot of us have ever seen in our life. Yeah, we've gone through, some wars, we've gone through some financial challenges, but we've not gone through something like this so global that it really challenges people to rise up and say, hey, what matters? We're going to see more change in family, work, and social dynamics come over the next 2 years than we've ever seen. In my belief, we're going to see a greater, working from remote than ever. We're going to see people choose careers that they would have never thought about choosing because of, one, is it essential or not? Two, Where can they do it from? And 3, most importantly, what impact does it really make in the world? That's as a leader, that's what I see. And I think the difference there is that's a vision that I have today. And that's kind of why, I'm looking at this, trying to help people, because I'm experiencing this book. But then I think there's a lot of people from a standpoint of, managers right now in life, and they're just like, when this thing's over, we go back to normal, it'll be okay. When this thing's over and I go back to my normal job. When this thing is over and, I can go back to, doing what I was doing before. To me, that's just being a manager. That's just taking life as it's coming at you, and how do you manage that, as opposed to saying, I'm going to be a leader and I'm going to blaze my own trail. That's just my interpretation there. So, part of that, a manager receives and executes a vision. They're like, it comes down from high, and this is what we're going to do. A leader inspires and motivates. I get kind of passionate. I wore a friend's shirt. He wrote a book, Lead for God's Sake. And he sent me this shirt, and it says, purpose over passion. Great book, Lead for God's Sake. And it kind of goes through, from a leadership point of view, you have to have enough accountability. It's kind of evidenced by a hammer, but then you have to have enough encouragement, which is evidenced by a carrot. But then you got to have heart, and a lot of heart. And so I believe in that, is like, you got to have heart. And I kind of can have passion sometimes. And I think a leader, John Maxwell, one of my mentors, he will say, I don't have time to motivate people. I'd rather empower them. I'd rather help them transform, because if they get that and they're passionate about it, they don't need motivation. And I'd agree with that. It's like, I don't want to try to motivate people. Let's go into something exciting. That's why rah-rah motivation people, they're not really my gig. And if it is for you, that's great. Maybe it's because if I got any extra poured onto me, I'd lose people. A manager, they just maintain and just hold on to it. And as I'm sharing these things, I would love to know if you guys are kind of think, oh yeah, I've been there. I've done that. Or yes, I also look at it as like, oh, that's where I need to change. Or yeah, that's where I get frustrated, is when I have this vision. I'm married to a person who is really kind of off the charts visionary. And I've gone through testing and realized that I have some elements of being able to be visionary, but I also like to, I can execute things. And it's kind of this dichotomy. And her and I relationship is, it's kind of tenuous sometimes, because I need to, execute what her vision is. But if I can't understand her vision, then I'm just lost. And I think that's where a part of this is a job for leaders, is to make sure that they cast a vision without losing people. So that's just an interjection here, is, as we're talking about this vision, something I've experienced, leaders have to weigh and take risks. If you're not willing to take a risk, especially right now, guess what? You're going to get it. I read a quote, is, the fear of what if and the fear of not doing are both fear. And the difference between just sitting and accepting it is just a lack of courage. So be courageous and just do it. Take that fear, jump out, because the fear of what you're going through possibility is no more, scary than the fear of, oh, if I actually take that, jump. Leaders, they focus on the long term. Managers are kind of the here and now. And it's funny, again, I share this, and I think in the world we're in today, and you can see leaders that are like, okay, how do we need to pivot? How do we need to innovate? What opportunity is there? There's something new. There's, iterations that can come through different software systems. And there's other people who are like, okay, let's just hold on to what we have. Let's just manage through this. And once we get through this, then there's going to be opportunity. And it's just so funny to me that there's times in our life that we can, see where the long term is so scary, but true. And the short term people just shriek into. And yet a leader's challenge is say, hey, let's get out there and let's see what's going to happen in 6 months. Because guess what? You're really not going to change tomorrow. but you can set yourself on a path that's going to make 6 months, 9 months, 12 months from now look entirely different by making a small change today that may not be able to be visible tomorrow. And to me, that's a part of having vision, and that is being focused on the long term. I'm going to use this example a little bit later, so I'm going to get you guys, kind of excited with it. If you wanted to go on, we live in Spokane. And if I wanted to drive to see my friends in the east coast of Canada, because I know they're on here and I want to give them a shout out because I can actually drive there, but it's a long ways away. If I said, okay, Kelly, let's get in a car and let's drive to New Brunswick, she'd be like, you're stupid, first of all. I'm like, no, it'll be fun. We'll make like a long, trip of this. If I didn't know where we were going, well, how would I ever know how to turn out of my driveway? Do I turn left? Do I turn right? But we have tools that can help us there. And I'll get to that later. But that's focusing on the long term. Where are you going? And being able to know where you are, because if I turn on my driveway left or right, it's not that big a deal, right? That's small, but that can make a massive difference where we end up based upon the first thing you talk about. All right, you guys are talking about cows. Oh my goodness. Yes, there are a lot of cows in the Maritimes. Okay, for you guys that don't know, I grew up on a dairy farm. I own cows today. I was a nutritionist for dairy cows. And so yes, great. Moving on, Dan. Dan, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Hey, I can laugh at this stuff. I can understand that and I can appreciate it. Some of you don't know me well enough. And I don't want to, hey, Braxton. Okay, my son decided do you want to watch? I would make a joke, but he interrupted it. So we'll go back. Okay, so let's move along. Is there anything in that chart? If there's anything kind of focusing leaders, managers, experiences, vision, we just deal with it. Is there anything that's sticking out with you guys? Is there anything that you're like, oh my goodness, that's an aha? If so, throw it in the chat. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking there. Share it in the chat. Let me hear it. Let me know. So that way, we can kind of iterate that. Is there something you're like, oh, I've been managing. I need to start leading. Oh, man, this is really important. I need to make sure I talk to people about, leading more, having that vision, displaying one of those 5 characteristics. Let me jump into, as you guys are thinking about that and sharing that. And I'm going to give you the page number so you guys can follow along. And this is, Michael goes into the 3 problems. I forgot to write down the page, but 3 problems as we move towards the solution of, vision. And, he shared the examples of leaders saying, hey, that vision thing, you go do that. Let somebody else determine the vision. And so leaders downplay the need for a vision. And one of the things that I listened to the podcast, and I shared this link in the post today. I don't know if some of you saw it, didn't see it, but Michael Hyatt was on podcast with Donald Miller, both of them in Nashville. And Donald Miller, he's written a lot of books. He's written the book Story Brand, which is a great book. And what's really funny is the 2 of them really kind of go, hand in hand. Thank you, Melissa. Pages 24 through 27. And one of the things that they talked about is Donald made mention of in their research, they found that a lot of CEOs end up lacking vision because they're really better at executing and they're not necessarily visionaries. And so what happens is they get challenged. They're like, oh, we don't need it. I've gotten here because we've managed our way here. Yes, Dan. We're really good at the nuts and bolts in the operations. Did you know this as well? Most CEOs come from the ranks of chief financial officer. Why? Because the chief financial officer has the biggest view of what's going on in the organization, and it ends up being the logical progression. It's not the visionary. It's not the one that's just kind of the wild and crazy I think of and maybe you guys noticed this, that a couple weeks ago, we watched Back to the Future with our kids, and I think of a visionary sometimes as Dr. Brown. Doc Brown, the guy with the hair going crazy because they're just like crazy out there. That's a visionary. And a lot of times corporations discount those people because they're just too far out there. Thomas Edison, amazing visionary. Did you know that when he was like 5 or 6 years old, he got sent home from school, and the school wrote a letter to his mom saying he's an idiot. He can't learn. He is developmentally just bad. He can't be here. Now, amazing story to that. And this is totally, off topic, but his mom never read him that letter. He didn't find that letter until his mom was long past away, and it was in her diary. He found this letter that was written by the headmaster of his school. And what he remembers his mom reading this letter saying, your son is so smart. He is so talented. He is so skilled that we don't have the teaching capacity to teach him here. So you're going to have to teach him. And she poured that belief into him. That's something way off subject, but that did come up today, and I thought I'd share with you guys. Okay. So the 3 problems are leaders. They don't see the need for vision. They don't see the need for it. They're confused about what vision is. I mean, you take a nuts and bolts person, somebody that is, spreadsheets, and, it's got to be T's crossed, I's dotted, and you say, hey, what's our vision? They're like, yeah, well, that's kind of Walt Disney make-believe, right? That's just, I don't know. It's like dream it and it will come. And there's a lot of, executives and some people that think, oh, they don't need it. It's like people just get it. One of the things that I've heard sometimes is that, oh, people should just get it. I say it once, they should just know it. And, when I think about that is, and as we're going to get into, the need for a leader to constantly share the vision is so important. It is almost like there's 2 things for that visionary to do, is to say the same message and say it a lot. Because it takes about 12 or 15 times of people saying it until it finally sinks in. They're like, oh, yeah. Because you need to reiterate it, because people aren't always on the same page. Leaders don't feel equipped to share a vision. Maybe it hasn't been drawn out, spelled out. And I think one of the great tools that we have to utilize here is the vision script that, shared in the links that Michael Hyatt put together. It really is a walk you through it process. And I think it simplifies it. Okay. So Michael finishes the chapter here. Chapter 1. He finishes it. And maybe you guys didn't necessarily, this didn't stick out, and maybe you didn't understand. A little bit of this is a good author. But I also think it's really, really good vision. So he ends chapter 1, and he goes through, this is what you're going to get in this book. He told us everything in the book at the end of the first chapter. I mean, you could literally not read the rest of the book and hear what he gave you, questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. And, he tells you what's going on. To me, that's a classic example of a good visionary saying, hey, let me give you kind of a real snippet. This is where we're going. We're going to the moon. Okay. We're going to go to the moon. The landscape's going to be amazing. And, we're going to have to get in a ship and we're going to the moon. Now, he doesn't bore you down with the details of getting to the moon, but he tells you where they're going. Because then he comes back and says, okay, now I'm going to tell you about those steps. And I think that's something that is really good for an author to do, because that's how you get people to read the rest of the book. But as you're as a leader sharing a vision, man, if you're saying, here, let's go, then all of a sudden you're getting people to buy in because you've given them enough meat to understand that, oh, I can get value out of this. Okay, so I had to reread chapter 2. I had to re-listen to chapter 2 about 3 times before the pitfalls of vision-driven leaders really sank in. And I was lucky that, I had the book so I could go through and really identify them. And one of the things that, a lot of stories here, Michael shares stories about his publishing company with Oral Hershiser and just kind of, oh my goodness, overzealous. And let me bring this back to the example that I used before in regards to the GPS. And I think the GPS is a great, kind of tool to be able to utilize to describe this. And again, I brought up, we're going to go on a trip, family trip. We're going to drive from Spokane all the way to New Brunswick. Okay. So we put into our GPS, we're going to New Brunswick. Now here's what happens is when you don't have a vision, it's like not having a GPS. It's like, well, we're just going to go on a trip. And that can be fun. But if you're starting a business or you're inviting people to go with you and you don't know where you're going, how would you expect them to say, yeah, I want to go on that ride? Now, maybe they're just adventurous and they're blindfold people. They're just like, yeah, let's just go. Woo. The reality is that's a very, very small amount of people. It is, people want to kind of know, all right, are you going to lead me to my death or are you going to lead me to something that is better? And ultimately, if you're in business today, you're doing something to impact people. The hope should be you're leading them to something better, right? Right? That's the intention. If you want to have a vision to, as Michael uses in his book, if you've gotten very far, it's about using their products and their tools and their solutions for a transformation. Now, I obviously have a passion in that transformation, kind of from a business point of view, from a leadership point of view. I've seen a lot of those myself, and I get really excited about the transformation because I know what it can do. And yet, if I'm telling you, it's like, oh, just come with me. And you're like, Tyler, where are you going? Oh, don't worry about it. Just come with me. You're not going to be as excited to go as, hey, we're going to go to New Brunswick. And along the way, we're going to go check out some amazing sites. We're going to go to some amazing fun things. We're going to go to, Mount Rushmore. All right. Side note, don't spend your time going to Mount Rushmore. It's not worth the drive. I've been there, done that. It is absolutely I'm sorry, you guys may like what next. Okay. So then you're going to go and we're going to go to Chicago, and Chicago's an amazing city. And then from there, we're going to go over and you know what? We're going to go through Niagara Falls. Why not? And then we'll go up into Canada. We'll go through Toronto. We'll go see the CN Tower. You know what? I've been to Montreal. Montreal's fun. I kind of want to be there in the summer. And then ultimately, we're going to get to New Brunswick. And I know there's so many amazing things to do in New Brunswick. We may even go lobster fishing. Yes. Okay. So if I paint that picture of where we're going, I know my GPS, I can get that. And if I put on my phone and it's going to say, Tyler, you're going to head on this road and you're going to go there. It's like, oh, that's a good place to stop. Well, the pitfalls for a leader that doesn't have vision, number one, is they're unprepared for the future. They didn't put anything in the GPS. They don't know where the heck they're going. They're just saying, hop in the car, let's drive. They don't know how much fuel they have in the tank. They don't know when they're going to go, stop at a hotel. It's just, oh, we run out of gas. We'll stay here at the side of the road. How many people have had a business where all of a sudden they run out of gas and they're stuck on the side of the road because they didn't think about looking at the gas gauge and finding out when the next gas station is? But if you're on a trip, you've got to prepare that stuff, right? You got to be aware of that. Now, I can leave my house and I can drive 400 to 500 miles in my truck before I need to get fuel. Does that mean I need to figure out exactly where I'm going to stop to get fuel? No. I know that in roughly that point of time, I need to get fuel, but probably somewhere about 100 miles, I need to understand, where do I need to get fuel? And that's what I think happens in business is you have that vision, you're prepared, but you don't have to know exactly where you're going to stop, where you're going to go. Because maybe one of my kids have to pee, or my wife's like, I got to pee. So you got to stop. Oh, we're stopping there. I might as well get fuel. Do these examples help you guys kind of envision what this looks like, especially from a leadership point of view? Okay, I'm good because that's how my brain works. Number two is missed opportunities. Well, say for example that I don't have that GPS put together. We're just driving down the road, and all of a sudden we passed a really cool site that we wanted to see. And we're like, oh, well, I missed that exit. And the next exit's 15 miles ahead. Well, I'm not going to turn around because, we want to get, somewhere. It's like, so without a plan or a vision, you don't know where you're going to stop. You can't identify. And maybe if I have that vision, I put in the GPS that we're going to go to New Brunswick, and we start mapping that out a few days beforehand. And we're like, oh, well, we're going to stop in Minneapolis because, we can go, instead of going south on 80, we can go on 90 and we can visit our friends there. Why not? Sure. We can make that change. And that's something that can prepare us. So we have those opportunities. Here's the deal. Number 3 is scattered priorities. We have a family of 5. We have a decision maker of 1, and the other 4 just better get along with what that one decision maker wants. I don't know if your family's like that, our family's like that. It's okay. It's cool. Now, who that one decision maker is can vary from time to time. All right. I'll be honest. But yet, if everyone wants to decide where we're going to go, what ends up happening? If our kids want to go to this, thing, and Kelly and I want to go to something different, or if I want to go to something and Kelly wants to go to something different, it doesn't work. There's a analogy, a term. It's like getting everyone in the boat rowing the right way. If you've ever been in a boat and people are trying to pull at it, row, different ways, it doesn't work. Why do, this is going way back. Horses, they used to be, tethered together in a hitch. Why? So they all went the same way. So it doesn't just like, oh, go wherever you want, horse. And, as a leader, if we have a vision and we're pointing people down the right direction, well, then they're like, hey, you either fit in or you fit out. Michael shared this in the podcast. He was at dinner with a couple other guys. And there was one that was there that lives there in Nashville as well. His name's Rory Vaden. He's written several books. And I've had the pleasure to kind of have him help me with my vision. And Donald Miller was talking about, we have this employee who I'm not sure he's a fit for us. And Rory goes, make your vision more clear. Just kind of very matter of fact. And Donald's like, oh. So he went back and he made the vision clear. And in 2 weeks, the guy said, this isn't the place for me. The guy decided to fit out rather than stay to fit in. And I think that's where, when you have your vision, what ends up happening is you get the right people in your organization. You get the right people to row the boat with you, that you can all say, yes, we have the same values. We're all going the same direction. This is going. You don't have scattered priorities. Number 4, strategic missteps. I love the quote from the Fuji founder. And I love it for a lot of different reasons. And, I actually had to reread it because I interpret it a little different than what it says. And it says, a peak always conceals a treacherous valley. The first couple times I heard it and I told people about it, I heard a peak reveals a treacherous valley. Because when you're on top of the peak, you get to see the valley down below. Because if you're looking peak to peak, if you're looking the long term, guess what? You look through that valley and you can start to identify, oh, here's where the problems are as we go through that valley. Now, I understand as this is saying, if you're looking at the peak and what the possibility is, you're not focusing on the valley you're going through, and that's where you can get in trouble. So if you're so focused on the success of where you're at today, if you're on top of that peak and you're like, I've made it, woo, I'm good, then you're not looking at the valley. If you're so focused on that peak or that you can't possibly comprehend there's a valley, you're going to get stuck. And so I think it's understanding that, you got to have a vision to say, all right, we're going to make it to that peak. But yet the valley says that we need to follow it and meander our way up. That's okay, because we're still focused on the peak, but we understand what we're going through in the valley. And that valley is going to temper you and make you so strong to be able to make it to the peak, that if you don't go through that valley, if you don't go through those struggles and grow, you're not going to get to the peak. I've had a good friend of mine, he climbed Mount Everest 6, 7, 8 years ago now. It's been a while. And, as he, talked to me about that experience, they did a ton of hiking. Why? They did it down below because they had to prepare. They had to get ready to be able to go to the peak. You think, the peak's just short up there, but you got to go through the valley to get ready for the peak. Number 5 is without a vision, you end up wasting money, time, and talent. You know, he kind of ends up going around in circles. You know, go back to the GPS example of going to New Brunswick. And if we don't know where we're going, and all of a sudden I start to make, you know, course corrections, I start to go here to there, I start, you know, I'm not sure where I'm going to end up. Dude, I just drive around in circles. I waste a lot of time. I waste a lot of money and fuel. I waste a lot of time, you know, all of that, waste a lot of resources. But then when you think about it from a vision point of view, is how many of you guys have ever worked with people? If you have any type of recruiting business, if you have co-workers, if you have an office where you're, you know, bringing people in to work with you, how many times have you ever had somebody work with you and you're like, man, I know they're good. I know they have like some real talent. I just don't know how to help them unlock that. I don't know how to best utilize that. I don't know what that looks like. And I think one of the things that I think about here is without a vision, it's you can have really, really talented people working with you. But if you don't know how that matters to your long term, their talent is ill-placed. And I think that's what's important about a leader is to help those people to show them, oh yeah, this is where we're going. And this is how your talent's going to be utilized, or to just be honest with them and say, hey, you can throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. You can throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball with so much movement on it that no one knows where the ball is going to go, that the catcher has a really, really hard time catching it. Well, if the catcher has a really, really hard time catching it, the hitter's probably never going to hit it. You probably should go use that talent where it can be utilized instead of working in my coffee shop, as I'm looking at Sean, working in my coffee shop mopping floors. Because yeah, you're strong, that you're able to do, you know, do with excellence, but you have a skill and talent that could be so much better utilized somewhere else. It would be wrong of me to hold you here instead of saying, you know what, your talent needs to go somewhere else because my vision doesn't align with your talents. I need to let you go of that. To me, that's a good leader, recognizing that in people as opposed to managing them and just holding them because that guy, he's super reliable. Everyone loves him. Everyone wants to be around him. He makes everyone else better. If I just hold him where he's at and keep him on the team, we're all good. If I just let him go and encourage him to take his talent somewhere else, that might hurt. To me, that's a manager, not a leader. And I think that comes down to not having the proper vision and allowing people to buy into it to where their talent isn't utilized. Lastly, and this really ties into the GPS, is the premature exit. You know, he tells this story about the guys that started SwiftKey and the guy who just bailed. And he's like, he said he made enough money to buy a bike. Well, I'm hoping that was like a really, really, really good, like technical, multi-shocked, like downhill, like primo bike, you know, carbon, all of it, instead of just something that you went and bought at Walmart. But I don't know because the story doesn't tell. But you can see where the guy just like, hey, he bolted because he didn't have the same vision and willing to go through the hard valley to make it to the peak. And I think about that as I use the example of the GPS and saying, oh, if we're going to New Brunswick, but we're just going to go on a drive and it's 2,500 miles and we drive 2,500 miles. I'm like, I don't want to drive this anymore. Let's just stop here and let's go home. And, you know, we'll drive 150 and we're good. Well, without the vision of where we're going and why and how it's going to be enjoyable and what we're going to get out of it, we leave. The premature exit, we're not willing to do the hard stuff. And so I look at that from a standpoint of, again, all of these, you know, the 6 pitfalls. And guys, these didn't sink in until I listened the 3rd time. The first time, didn't catch it. The second time, I was like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. It was the 3rd time that I was like, oh. And so why I think that's imperative to you guys listening, and, you know, everyone stayed. There's one person that's had to hop off. That's okay. We're up to 34 people, which is exciting. I love hopefully you guys are getting value out of this. I know it's gone a little longer than I intended. I want to keep it 30 minutes, but I'll be less long-winded next time. Is I learned and I saw those opportunities and pitfalls because I spent the time to make sure that I showed up for you guys with something to learn. And I know if I do that, that means one, I'm going to be able to utilize that for others, but two, I'm going to impress it upon me as a leader and as being able to share vision that other people can see that too. Because if I would have just glossed over it and I would have just like, oh yeah, you know, the 6 pitfalls, or, oh yeah, that story about Kodak, they just absolutely bombed. They just didn't see what was going on around them, but not correlating it to something that maybe we can relate to in everyday life. I had to go back and think about that. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. So as I've asked you guys, from the apply, the change, and the teach, are the things that you guys picked up in these first 2 chapters that you can go and say, oh, I need to apply this to my life. I need to change this in what I do. And, you know, the third part is teach. And for me, a lot of this is, you know, teaching you guys, which I know from my experience when I teach it, that means I have to have applied it and I have to have changed it in order to teach it. It kind of works that way. It goes ACT is, and so I hope you guys got value out of this. I hope that you guys, you know, got a little bit deeper understanding in this first 2 chapters than maybe you would have just gotten reading through it. And if not, that's all right. Please give me feedback. How can I make this more valuable to you guys? How can I help you guys understand a little bit more? Because here's my hope. Is my hope after we get done in the next 5 weeks that you guys will be like, okay, I am so crystal clear on my vision and or the fact that I just want to talk about vision. I was talking to one of our business partners yesterday, and this lady's just amazing. And I said to her, I said, hey, if there's only 2 things that you have time to do in what you do, if there's 2 things that you can do, and maybe it's just spending 5 minutes to do it, I know it will make an impact in so many lives. And that is share your vision, because she does have one. And number 2, your belief in people. And so I encourage you guys, as you're listening to this, if you are looking at it from a leadership perspective, and you're in leadership, if you're wanting to grow in leadership, developing a vision and telling people what that vision is and inviting them into the opportunity to engage in that vision. Because without people, your vision's just an idea. And when you have people with you, you're all of a sudden your vision turns into something that can become a movement. And if you share that vision and then you tell people with belief that you have in them and the belief that you're instilling in them, you're going to create change. You're going to transform people. You're going to have an impact. So I encourage you guys to, as you're developing your vision, share it. And when you see people, pour belief into them. If you're going on a path and you see something bigger down the road, 6, 8 months, 9, 12 months from now, whatever it may be, and you see people around you, tell them what you believe in them, how you believe in them, because I think that's going to be more meaningful to you, because it's going to show more purpose. It's going to show what you're about. And it's also going to create people around you that say, let's go. All right. Was that good, guys? Was that helpful? I see some thumbs up. All right. This is what I want you guys to do. I'm not sure if I'm going to share this recording. We'll have the recording, but I'm not sure if we're going to share in the Facebook group, because I want people to show up and be engaged. And I understand not everyone can, but this is what I would love you guys to do. If you guys could do me a favor. Okay. And if that is, go into the Facebook group and share either a takeaway from today or a takeaway from your first 2 chapters. All right. So if you guys could go into the group just real quick right now, before you forget about it, before all of a sudden your life gets overrun with whatever is happening next. I'm going to go get lunch and then I'm going to come back. I got another Zoom at 1:00. I want you guys to share if, something you're going to act on, something you're going to change, something you're going to teach, I would love for you guys to share that. All right? Is that cool? Does that work? Okay. Well, thanks for being here, guys. Next week, same time, 11 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock for my Hawaiian friends. Island time, we're looking at like 3:43. What's that time? 3 o'clock. Oh my goodness, so many time zones. So glad you guys are here. So glad you guys got value. Here's the deal. If you think somebody else would get value from this, tell them to be here next week. Okay? Is that cool too? All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. I'm so glad you were here.